Hello everyone and welcome back to another brand new video. Now we are about halfway through, or just slightly over halfway through the life cycle of Motogp 24. So for me, it is time we start looking forward to Motogp 25. Now, for me, every year there's things I like about the games, there's things I don't like about the game, and pretty much every year since I've been making content, I've made one of these videos where I state everything I dislike and everything I'd like to see improved. Now I have reached out also to my YouTube community. I've asked about two and a half weeks ago now for some feedback on what you'd like changed, and same in my Discord server. Link to my Discord server is in the description below. Now we'll get to the community questions in a minute, but first off I'm just going to go through my own personal feelings and what I believe needs to be fixed. I have a couple of topics and a few points on each. I'm just going to go through it, so it's going to be a bit of a long video. Get yourself a nice beverage and get comfortable. So we're going to start off with game modes. I just think straight away the game is lacking a bit of content. We have time trial, we have career mode, championship mode, quick race, we have online, and we have live GP, and we have Motogp Academy. And when you say all them, it actually sounds like there's a lot in the game, but like a lot of people don't do time trial, very few people do quick race or championship mode. Online is not very good, which means online and live GP kind of gets slated down, and a lot of people don't even touch the Motogp Academy. So a lot of them game modes, as much as they're good to be in the game, there's very little content in them. I'd love for them to bring back classic bikes. It's something that I've been requested on both Discord and YouTube, and personally I do like the fact that maybe we get some 125s, 250s, 500s, even some early 4-strokes from, we'll say, the 990 era, or even the early 1000cc's from 2013 onwards. And there's a lot of bikes we could get. Again, if we could get something, maybe not the 2009 season mode that we had in GP22, but something similar where we have something we've seen in previous games like Motogp 19, where we had plenty of historical challenges. Just something to do in the game. It just gives a bit of fleshes out the content, and definitely brings some sort of replayability. And just the longer you keep people on the game, the more people play it, the more people recommend it. It's just the way of life. So big thing for me would be just to get more content. I'd also like to see a challenge mode. I kind of mentioned it there again, that kind of challenge mode with the in GP19, but just something where you're given for example half a lap of Valencia, and you're given a 500cc bike and you have to beat it in a certain time, and there's medal system to it and stuff like that. Just again, more stuff, more content. Of course, as well, we've seen in previous games where we had the classic events, I believe is GP20, where you would have you could replay old moments that have happened in real life and try and recreate it. Catalonia 09 for example. So anything like that, just some more content in the game will be perfect. Other than that, I think we have some decent. Again, I don't think quick race, championship mode, I don't think there's much in that. Time trial, that's just kind of a training tool for most people. And again, I'll cover career mode in its own little segment later. Now, next up for me is the gameplay. The gameplay is arguably one of the most important things for a game to be good. And a lot of things, I feel a lot of my community seem to agree with me in the YouTube and the Discord. So again, I'll probably repeat myself a bit from some of them, but I'll start with what I think it needs to address. I think the game just needs to be truer to real life. Perfect example is we can't use all the tires in game. They're available, but they don't all work. So for example, in my career modes, I've done 30 odd episodes where I've done a main race and a sprint. I've never once used anything else other than soft in the dry and soft in the wet. It's just, that is all I'm using, and you cannot get away with it. Now, I understand that some tracks are better for, and like certain tracks, certain temperatures, you need certain stuff, but that there's no way that the whole calendar should be softs, and it's just a bit unfortunate. I liked, for example, I'm going to probably reference Motogp 21 a bit in this video, but I felt the tire system, that was very good. You got a recommendation from your engineer. You could stray away and you could make it work, but you would pay maybe a slight penalty in terms of if on a slightly colder afternoon you went for a hard front tire, you might be able to keep the temperature in it and would end up kind of a cold tear and it would wear faster. Bring back things like that. I feel like at the moment, if you run a hard or medium front tire, it just overheats, and then you run a soft, which makes absolutely no sense, and it just is absolutely perfect, doesn't overheat, barely wears, and it's just absolutely fine for the race. So that's a big thing. It's just fix the kind of tire system really. Another thing as well is just like small little things where, for example, in career mode when you're in a sprint, there's less track limit warnings to get a penalty in the sprint versus the main race. The game doesn't have that. You still need 5, whereas in real life you get 1 track limit. You make one mistake off track once, you get a warning, and then you get one more, and then the third one is your penalty. Whereas in the sprinting game, that's not that's unfortunately not picked up really. So it's just kind of a bit of an overlook where it's just maybe a copy and paste, but it's one of those things where just these small little things just build the game's atmosphere and feeling. The other thing for me is in gameplay is the AI. Now the AI for me are still thick. They come out of the pit and they just turn directly 90-degree left onto the race line, and then they start to sway, and they kind of just do it. They do a lot of stupid stuff. They're still very much following these kind of predetermined tracks, which make them very difficult to race. Sometimes you'll notice there are certain tracks or a certain corner they just happen to go wide, and you're like, great, I'm making up the time, but then you're ahead of them into this corner, and because of them constantly going wide and taking a different line, they just run into you. So they're still a bit messy for my liking. I still think that in modern day compared to other main title games that the AI could be a lot better, so that's one thing I'd like to see them refined even further. I know each year they try and make a step with them, and I'm hoping GP25 is the same, that they can make it better. I'll talk a bit more about the adaptive AI later, because that was kind of something that was mentioned in my community feed. But that's kind of it for me, just on my own feelings on the gameplay. It just needs to be a bit more true to real life. The rules need to be followed slightly closer, and the AI still need a decent chunk of work for me. Now, the next one is a pretty big one, and that is career mode. Now, unfortunately for me, I feel career mode needs a complete overhaul. So, for me at the moment, career mode, as much as I like the menus, and I think a lot of them are good, I just think we have gotten to a point where it's bland, it's boring, it's dull. It's essentially a season mode. There's not much to it. It's very 2D in my eyes. I think that the social media section, for me personally, it doesn't add anything to the game. I don't use it. You'll probably see in my career modes, I never even do it. I just don't bother, because it just doesn't affect the game in any way. You can be really good friends with Pecco and be really kind of arch enemies with Marcus. I don't feel any difference to it. A lot of stuff they say is just made up rubbish. That it's not true to real life. Again, it doesn't feel realistic. So that's more of a bit of a arcade aspect to the game for me, so I try to avoid that at best really. So for me, I would love to see them go back to we saw it in Motogp 2013 when they first came in, where you had you're in basically a trailer, your own trailer. You have your bedroom where you get to change your leathers and pick stuff like that, or similar to F1 2010 where you have media interviews. If you get a podium or qualify in the front row or pole, you have to go and sit down in the media centre and do questions. That sort of stuff just builds the atmosphere that you're a real life rider. I think the game needs to be brought back into a POV style career mode where you are the main focus of your career mode, and that it's all around you. At the moment, it just doesn't feel like it's about your rider. It just is. I just feel personally it's a bit bland. I think I'd have much more fun if I went back playing older career modes, because I feel like they're more about me than the current ones. I think another one that was very good from, I think GP 13 and 14 had, I don't remember if it was in 15, but they had the kind of social media news articles about you, where, like, for example, back in the day, if Lorenzo won, the front cover of the magazine in the game was Lorenzo dominates at Aragon or something, for example, like that. So I think, again, it just gives a storyline to your career mode. So I think all these small things need to build up, but I do definitely think that we don't need these cinematics in the pit lane. I think we should be sat in our chair behind the bike, our engineer to our left or right, some guys taking data loggings from the bike, some guys putting on the tyre warmers, for example. So when you come in, you ride back into the pits, the bike gets wheeled in, you go over and sit down, you can see our engineers actually doing things, because at the moment a lot of them are just standing down on this kind of random loop, and they kind of just consistently do the same thing, and it's been like this for probably the best part of the last 10 years, that they just have this kind of little kind of cutscene that plays through, and it kind of gets just repetitive. I think I'd much rather be sat down with my engineer, turn to my engineer, and then start to explain my issues and stuff, and have a back and forth there, and then go back out, and he gets up, walks onto his bike and stuff like that. So I think that would be much better, just for, again, the overall aspect of feeling that you're actually in the game and in the pit lane, and not just in some kind of menu waiting to go back to the track. For career mode, I'd say that's probably the main things for me that I think it just needs an overhaul. To be fair, I don't know what else they could do with it. A morale system, I think, as someone mentioned in one. I think that's later on in the community questions again, so we'll probably cover that later. We're going to jump now to online. Fortunately, online, right, has a couple of issues, and they're not all online's fault. So for me, physics are a bit of an issue, because the physics have such an input lag and delay that you're very hard to be. First of all, it's very hard to pick the bike up if someone comes up your inside. A lot of people online don't do it, because the online racing is very arcadey, with people just bounce off you, and it's not fun, not realistic. That is a big mess of the community, or big mess of the online part of the race, because the racing is so dirty that people don't even try the race clean. And even if you do, it's quite hard because the netcode is really poor. But I think if the physics made a step forward and the bikes became more in the rider's hands, we'll come to the physics next, because I have probably more to talk about the physics. That will be my my specialist department, you could say. But if the physics made a step and the bike was more we'll say agile, and just you had more control over the bike, I think the racing could be better, because you could put your bike in positions where at the moment I feel like it's near impossible. Perfect example is watch the esports races. It's just the 12 of the fastest guys in the world doing laps and bouncing off each other. The racing is not clean. So it shows a massive flaw in the game, that if the best guys in the world can't even battle, it just shows that the game online is not good enough, and that it comes down basically to physics for me. But the live GP, it's decent in fairness. It's a good idea, but again, the fact that the online racing is so bad because of the physics and a bad netcode, that mode is going to fail year on year unless it is addressed with better netcode and better physics. Now we are going to go now to the physics, because I'm probably going to spend the next 2.5 weeks talking about what I'd like to see change in the physics. Now, a lot of people know I've not been happy with the Motogp's games physics since 21. Really dislike 22, really dislike 23, dislike 24 for some reasons, but some of it's okay. It's made a bit of a step this year, but still for me has just a couple of massive flaws. So big thing for me, I'm going to probably not go in any order, is just the bike sits up when you get on throttle. So in real life, if you are completely off throttle, the bike will nosedive and very much kind of pull back on the engine brake. If you open the throttle slightly, the bike will sit down and it'll actually start to turn more, because you're loading the bike up, you're loading the tires, and the suspension sits and the bike will want to turn. In MotoGP 24, 23 was really bad for the sit-up effect, as I think it was kind of known. It's still in 24. The one main thing I have an issue is coming back from GP bikes to MotoGP 24 is that I just cannot get the bike out of the corner right. I'm either going way off track or I'm getting on the throttle too late. It's just, I feel inconsistent. The throttle shouldn't be making that such much of a difference where the bike sits up and goes straight. It's not very realistic. It's not as bad as obviously as 23. 23 was ridiculous. But unfortunately for me, it's still there too much. I think you just need to completely get rid of it, or it's redesign it so it's more intuitive, because at the moment it's just like a random points of it's more like hard coded into physics that once the rider's hit, will say, just for example, 70% throttle, the bike instantly starts to understeer, which isn't realistic. So what happens is, if you change your throttle on different parts of the track in terms of different corners, the bike will end up changing its physics because of it. It's just, again, it's messy, it's not right, it's not the way it should be done, and it's one thing I really want to see. Now, the biggest issue I have with the game, hands down, any game mode, anything, is the physics in terms of why can't the bike turn and brake. If you're hard on the brakes, the bike is essentially immobile. It's such a crazy thing to me. It came in 22, was there through all of the 22's life cycle. Unfortunately, it was there in 23, and that's why I hated 23 so much, because there was just the weird sit-up effect I didn't like, and I had the extreme issue of that I can't turn in and brake. Like, when you're braking on a bike, you're loading the front tire, which means you're giving more load to the front tire with more grip, so the bike should turn more aggressively. I understand when you have the front brake, you create a bit of understeer, but like, the fact that you can't, it's literally near physically impossible. My braking technique on this game is getting hard on the brakes, get off the brakes, turn the bike in, get back on the brakes. That's not how it works in real life. My other option is hard on the front brake, get on the throttle to trick the game into thinking you're not braking, and then the bike becomes a bit lighter. Now, that's a very risky strategy, because what happens is you end up spinning the rear up while braking, and you get a bit of a kind of buckering rear effect where the front is trying to slow down, the rear is accelerating, and the bike starts to kind of just yo-yo and starts kind of judder its way into the corner. So for me at the moment, that is hands down the biggest issue I've had with 22, 23, and unfortunately it's still there in 24. A lot of you probably will note that the real heavy braking, if you don't release the brake, you cannot get the bike to turn at all. And I'm not saying that I'm trying to turn to a 90-degree corner with 100% brake. I understand that release the brake, the bike will slowly start to turn in, but it's just done wrong in this game. It has been for a few years now. So it's GP25. If this has this aspect of the physics, it'll be make or break for me. I genuinely think I can't do another year of trying to play a bike game where I have to brake hard, release the brake, and then try and grab on the brake. Or another way I do it as well is that, like, you'll come into a braking zone and you throw the bike to maybe 30-40 degrees lean and then try and brake on that angle, which in a lot of corners isn't right, because you end up apexing early and going wide. So it's just ways of trying to get around the physics. So that is my hands down biggest point of the video. Another thing I've already slightly touched on is the input lag. The game just does not react to your left stick movements. It's so dulled down. I wonder, is it because there's issues behind the physics that if you have too much control over the rider, we create more issues with the bike? I do not know. I don't really care. You need more control over the rider, and you need that lag gone, because it just makes the game infuriating to play for me. I have to relearn the game nearly every time I come on it. I will admit, I only play GP24 to make content. I do not play it in my spare time at all. It is purposely down to YouTube, is the only reason I play it. And I do go on GP bikes if I want to play anything bike related. So then when I come back from that, it's just the bikes feel terrible. If you kind of put all these three things together, the understeer throttle, the braking and unable to move the bike, and heavy braking, just the immobilization, a really big issue. And then this mad input lag. And I've tried many times redoing my controller customization in the calibration to see if I can get it, but you end up just making it so far that, like, as soon as he gets off the brake, the bike goes to full lean, and then you don't have the little dead zones where you can kind of control the rider's weight. So for me, the physics are the biggest issue at the moment for me. And the final thing kind of adds all this up together. I think the game should be made harder. I think the input lag and all these things are in this game to make it a bit more kind of soft and plushy, to make it feel easier for newer players. I think the game overall should give the rider, the player, more in his hands, in his or her hands, and make it more like the fact that you need to be able to control the bike better to go faster, not just rely on bugged physics to kind of get around the lap. I think the rider should have the control of everything in his hands, and I believe then that will make the game more enjoyable, because you'll be able to control the bike. That's one thing again that GP Bikes does amazing, is it's all in your hands. If the bike slides, you need to correct it. The game isn't going to hold your hand, and I think GP24 and the last couple of them holds your hand too much. And what happens is, I feel I fight the game and the game doesn't fight me back, and that's where I have these issues with, because I'm probably breaking the game to try and ride it the way I want to, try and ride it in a realistic fashion and not just treat it as a video game. So that's probably another way you could say it, is that, like, you're treating it as a video game and not actually riding a bike, which is a bit of an issue for me. So I think give the player more control over the rider, less input lag, and make the game just a bit harder. I think then it increases skill gaps and stuff, and just makes more of a, you could give more progression that people need to pick up the game and learn the game to get good at it. It's not just something you can jump on and ride with these kind of arcadey physics that I think we have at the moment. That's pretty much it for the physics, and that's pretty much it for my own personal feelings for what I would like to see change for GP25. So first up in the communities is the YouTube comments. So basically we have 5 different ones, and I'm going to run through them quickly and I'll just put it on screen when I'm talking about. So IAZ Russell, or IAZZ Russell, has said, a more realistic approach to the game as how it is in real life. Have practice start sessions, warm-up lap, cooldown lap, and also some celebrations like they do in the FIFA games. Answer question media, and a morale system as well. AI should avoid hitting you and be penalised, or the penalty should be fair. So again, fully agree that that's pretty much what I said at the start of the gameplay. This needs to be true to real life. I completely agree here with Russell that in many ways that we're just lacking out a lot of features like a practice start session, I think, which is something that I'll probably get in a second. There's another thing about the launches in this game that's a bit of an issue, but having practice start sessions, warm-up laps, cool laps, that just again adds to the feeling of you are a real rider, being able to ride out of the pits to do a sighting lap and have to get your tyre temps up to temperature, and you can see in your graph down the bottom that your front tyre is cold and you have to work it a bit hard, and actually make it so that if you do a really bad sighting lap and warm-up lap, that when you get to turn 1 you have a lot of chatter and a bit of understeer, and it's easy to lock the front and crash. Whereas if you do a really good one, you can really get down to your speed immediately and go quick. It just, for me, adds a bit of just a bit more realism to the game, which is something that I feel the game is lacking. Now, next up is Non-Lizel. So, fixing the voice chat on Xbox, because it's not been working since 22 or longer, which, to be frank, is absolutely ridiculous. Fixing the usage of self-made custom helmets online, because for some reason you get random numbers, helmet rider stickers, and even if you upload your design, it simply doesn't work. Now, these are perfect examples. Now, unfortunately, the voice chat on Xbox, I'm not too sure, as I'm on PC, but the bottom line I take from this is that the custom helmets, numbers, butt patches, they never work right. There's always at launch some issue with them, so it's something they need to get fixed. It's one of those things that it's in the game, we have the creator, people want to have their own designs on the rider online, and at the start of the game, when the game is most popular online, we need to have these features working so that you can express yourself with your own designs, and I think that's a critical thing, that it just needs to be in the game. Next up is Ben Watson 5012. Definitely need to fix other bikes coming out of the pit right in front of you, something I already mentioned a while ago. I also wish they would bring back custom bikes like the Hertz and Oakley and that other one. So again, if you go back to GP 17, I believe it was, where you could have custom teams, you have custom sponsors you could sign to in career mode and bring them through. Again, just adds a bit more options and a bit more replayability for career mode, that maybe you've done 3 seasons, you've won Moto 3, you've won Moto 2, you've gone into GP and you've got a factory contract with Honda, we win the championship, but then you want to go in and start your own KTM team and try and bring them up and compete with the Red Bull. This gives more of an option to play with the career mode. It gives you more replayability, as I said, which is a big thing in a game where essentially we're just going in circle on metal. We have these machines and we go in circles. That's basically what we do. So the more options we have to play with it is more important for me. Another really important one here is FJBH101. Curbs that you can actually ride over like they do IRL without the horribly glitchy physics. They have an issue, fears, and still not fixed. Now this comment here, I just started making me think. I never think there's been any milestone MotoGP game that's ever had good working curbs. Fair enough, the inside curbs, you go across them, you can't lose the front, that is realistic because you overlean, that makes sense. But the outside curbs that just go and you start vibrating and the revs go up and it just starts to spin, the outside curbs offer very good grip in real life and they ride them in real life, so I don't understand why in the game they've never had them right. As far back as MotoGP 13, I remember the outside curbs being an issue and you can't ride them, and there were certain tracks where you can't touch them. At the moment, like, there's still curbs that, like, if you hit them at a wrong angle, you just get launched, and that's just not good enough in today's modern day standard of gaming. So that is definitely a big one, that the curbs have to be completely redone from the ground up. And last but not least, from the YouTube is Streety_64. More consistency when launching off the line. It's a game I should need to have millisecond perfect reaction time. The wheel not to come up. Now that's the big thing in career mode, is that they just completely nerf you off the line. So even if you somehow on a poor bike qualify third, you're going to be outside the top 10 by the time you get to turn 1. You just have no opportunity to stay with them. It should be much more, I suppose, like other games where you have a clutch mechanism and like you can actually get good with the clutch, and if you get the clutch system wrong, you wheelie and it maybe bogs down. It shouldn't be just release a button and go, because it's not, you don't have it. Again, like I said a while ago about the physics, give the game more in the player's hands, that they can make the difference over the game, and you're not relying on a computer to release the clutch. So you release the A button for your clutch, for example, and the bike goes away and starts wheeling. There's very little you can do in that situation because you didn't give the option to hold the revs perfectly, to release the clutch at the right time, have the good release and stuff like that. So unfortunately, it's one of those things that really frustrates me about 24, that in career mode, especially when you have a slightly lesser bike, they really penalise you by having a very poor bike off the line. So that's one thing he said. AI needs to be able to pick up the bike in more situations instead of running straight through. Again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think most people would agree that the AI just simply do not see you most of the time and is just focused on doing their own lines, and they're too busy in their own little world. And unfortunately, the player does get the wrong end of the stick most times when getting on the opposite side of an AI. And the final thing he does says, I also like to have a complete game at launch instead of waiting a month for bikes model delivery to be updated, and they also keep them updated as long as it changes throughout the season. Completely agree. That's one thing that frustrates me. Push the game out a little bit later. I understand they have to have the game out at certain times for contractual reasons, but man, it would be so much nicer if we got the game and you could start career mode day 1 in Moto 3 and have the up-to-date teams, up-to-date riders, the right helmets, the right riders, rider faces, everything done right, and we don't need to rely on the likes of Biker Gaming to basically fix the game after it comes out after release and spend hours and weeks and months on this game trying to update this game. And fair play to him for all the mods he puts in and stuff, but he shouldn't have to do that. The game should come with the actual content of that season that it's promoting. So next up now is our Discord, and our first one up is I Am Kushik. Now, fortunately his comment is extremely long, so I won't be able to include everything, but he's included a lot of good points. I've picked through the ones that haven't been mentioned, because again, a lot of people have mentioned similar points, and unfortunately I can't just keep repeating myself in this video, or we're going for far too long already. It's going to be a really long video, so I'm trying not to spend too much time on repeating myself. But again, the ability for all tire compounds in the dry sessions to work and actually have a different feeling, and they wear differently, and just basically a different performance from each tire. Something that the game lacks. I've already mentioned that you can basically get away with running softs everywhere. At the moment, that's not good enough. Next thing he says is the fix the track limits. Unfortunately, it's just a lot of tracks you can tracky stand, and if you go so far off the track, for example, he gives the example of Thailand. It's like the game kind of forgets you've gone off track and just allows you back on. And his final point, which is one of that was in MotoGP 17, I believe, was a co-op mode online, so you could have like a co-op career mode online. I think this would be brilliant. It'd be great fun for content creation. I think a couple of friends get together and have an old session on an online career mode would be really cool. So I definitely like that idea. So in fairness, again, like you said, so the kind of overall improve the tire compounds, have more options in terms of tires, in terms of just being able to use them and have them have their own properties and temperatures and work in their own ways, as they have done in previous games, I might add. So they have this feature before, so I don't know how it's not working in the current day ones. Track limits, it just needs to be better. Just again, I completely agree that some tracks, some curbs set off track limits, and sometimes you might get 2 warnings because you'll end up having like a moment on a curb and your rear steps off twice. I shouldn't be getting 2 penalties for 1 mistake, if that makes sense. And again, the co-op career mode is a great idea, so I really would like to see that in the future. Next up is Tracy. Let us do warm-up laps, line up on the grid manually with the option to skip, continue working on adaptive AI, and rider transfer, both great ideas from last year. So again, completely agree, just the more options. Again, I think I've already mentioned the warm-up laps and stuff, and be able to give the option to the player to skip, or give the option to the player to be able to do it. I think most people would like to do it at the start, maybe get sick of it after a while, but I think it's a great idea just to be able to actually do the riding to the grid and getting set up and building the immersion in a championship race. You're in Valencia, it's the last race season, you versus Marquez in the championship. There's 3 points in it, and you do your warm-up lap, and you're doing everything you can to get the bike in the perfect window. You're doing a 50% race, building that whole immersion and that atmosphere around the race would really improve it, I think, in this game. Casper in with better contract system, pretty much the same as pre-23, as if you could choose which teams you can ride for before the season actually ends. So again, Casper just saying there that at the moment you feel like you're kind of shoehorned into picking a team right at the end, so you kind of get cut out, whereas it'd be nicer, just like in real life, a lot of teams and riders have decisions made halfway through the season, if not the first third of the season, where they know what their next season is going to entail, they know who they're signing with, they know who they're in contact with. Just allow us to have a bit more of a kind of, I suppose, option in terms of contracts. In the game, they like having these transfer windows. That's not a thing in real life. You don't have a certain time where you can sign riders. It's all done throughout the year, and it's done early in the year, so it'd be much nicer if we could have a bit more realistic contract system, which I think is really a very good idea. And last but not least, now in the Discord, ability for riders to retire and start their own team, or maybe buy a team. Like if Quattraro were to retire, he could start a team, El Diablo Racing or FQ20. Then for riders to buy a team, like if Taka wants to purchase Honda Age or something along those lines. And I'll just add to it, maybe if Taka retires, he becomes one of the engineers or the kind of team management within the Honda or even the Repsol team, just kind of have a bit of knowledge that he's a Japanese rider, he would end up in Honda somewhere. Just have a small bit, something like that. And again, just to add to the riders retiring and buying a team or owning your own team, whatever, it shouldn't be something that happens 3 times a year. I think it should happen maybe once in a career mode, that Marquez retires and he ends up with Red Bull Racing MM or something, for example. I think would be a good idea, and I think again it just adds more replayability. You get to season 4, season 5, and now we're up against Marquez, and Alex Marquez rides for his brother team, and all these little storylines you could have in the game. But that pretty much wraps it up for today's video. My voice is about to give out. I hope you have enjoyed. I want your own feedback back in the comments, because you never know, someone from my son might see this video. These videos do tend to do really well in terms of views, and they get pretty much good love from the algorithm because of the good initial views, because a lot of people like to chime in when it comes to what the game needs to have for 2025. So again, we're going to leave it there. I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, drop your own comments down below, and I'll be responding to all the good ones about what we need in 2025. And I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, drop a like, subscribe. I shall catch you in a future MotoGP video in the not so distant future. Thanks for watching. Slog a fall.